Hello everyone, welcome back to Third Elementary Tutorials. Being creative is a process that requires collecting materials, putting them together, use your imagination, and work hard to come up with an idea. My inspiration with this tutorial came after I visited Florence, where I shot some photos and textures, scanned some objects like the ribbon in the envelope, and put together this composition called A Letter from Florence. To start putting this composition together, I'm going to open up the envelope image. So I'm going to go to the File menu, Open, double-click on the envelope, minimize this. And the goal here is to create two selections out of this envelope. The side flaps with the bottom flap as one selection. Then the throat of the envelope with the top flap as another selection. So for that I'm going to select the pen tool, which I'm going to use to create precise paths, and turn them into selection outlines. Now once you select the pen tool, go to the options bar right here and make sure the second icon, this icon, the paths icon, is active, which is the default setting. So click once, hold down the shift key to create a straight line, release the shift key, click and drag to create a nice curve. Now what we have here is we have a smooth point with these two control handles that they are locked to each other. We need to convert this smooth point into a cusp point. And a cusp point has two directional lines that are independent of one another and are no longer in alignment. So whenever you move one control handle, there is no effect on the opposite one. So in order to convert this smooth point into a cusp point, I'm going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, change the direction of the control handle, and replace the existing one to follow the path that I'm going next. So hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac, change the direction of the control handle, release the mouse, click and drag. Now before I release the mouse, hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac once again, change the direction of the control handle, release the mouse, click and drag to create a nice curve. Hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac before you release the mouse, and then hold down the Shift key to create a straight line. And then right here I'm going to close the path, and you can see the indication from the pen tool has a circle right next to it. That means close the path. So click once. Alright, now I'm going to select the direct selection tool, which is the white arrow tool that I can select individual anchor points and control handles to reshape them. So click once, and I'm using the tap arrow key and make sure this is a straight line. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key to select both these corner points, and I'm pressing the down arrow key. Alright, I'm going to zoom in and see where this point is. This right here. So I'm going to select it once. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select the other one. So they're both selected. So I'm tapping the right arrow key. Okay. Now zoom out. What I want to do now is I want to make sure that these two points right here are aligned to each other horizontally. So I'm going to go to the view menu, bring on my rulers. I'm going to click and drag and bring a ruler right here. And I can just click here once and tap the down arrow key. Looks pretty good. View menu, clear guides, view menu, no more rulers. So let's look on this side. Let's zoom in just a bit. I think I can move this just to the left a bit, so I'm going to select that point. I'm going to also select that point, holding down the Shift key, and I'm happy with this. Alright, now I'm holding down the space bar on my keyboard to go up and down, left and right, and I'm going to work on this end here. So let me zoom out just a bit, bring this down, okay, zoom out even more, work on this left flap, let's work on that one, that. Something like that. Okay. Alright, we select the first path, and as you can see right here from the paths, this is a working path. If you don't have that, you can go to the window menu and you can bring up your paths. So you can double click to save this path. Now what I want to do is I want to create more paths that would include the throat of the envelope and the top flap as another selection. Now what happens is that I want to keep this from here to this path. I want to keep it as a common path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag, duplicate this path. I'm going to select the direct selection tool. I'm going to marquee select those two corner points. I'm going to press delete on my keyboard, and then I'm going to zoom in, select the pen tool, click once, click and drag. I'm going to hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. I'm going to change the direction of the handle, click and drag. I will do the same, click and drag. Hold down the Alt key or the Option key, click and drag. And now here I'm just going to go to the other end, just click and drag. And I'm going to improve this a bit later. So hold down the Alt key or the Option key, change the direction of the control handle, click and drag, change the direction, and I'm going to close the path again. Right next to the pen tool, circle appears, that means close the path, so click and drag, and then select the direct selection tool, click this again, bring this up, and I'm holding down the shift key as I'm doing. Okay, so let's work on this guy here. Bring this up. And as you can see, I'm going very close to the edge of the envelope, but I leave some breathing room at the same time. Okay, now let's zoom in a bit. Now as you can see here, look what happens. I want to move this control handle, but what happens is this is a smooth point, and it has these two control handles that are locked to each other. So what I need to do again is hold on the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and change this control handle independently from the other handle. See, those two handles are not dependent from one another because before I already created a cusp point. Now here, just going to bring this in a bit. There we go. Let's go to the other end. And we have the same problem here. So undo this, hold down the Alt key, the Option key of the Mac. There we go. Let's click this again. Bring this up. Something like that. So I'm going to zoom out. As you can see, I have those two paths now. Okay. The bottom paths for these flaps and the bottom flap and the top. So what I need to do now is I'm going to load this path's selection. So I'm going to go to this one first, and I'm going to click right here. I'm going to load the path as a selection. I'm going to go to the select menu, inverse my selection. I'm going to do edit, copy, file new, and for the purpose of this exercise I'm just going to keep things small, so 700 by 525. Click OK, edit, paste, push this down here. Now select, deselect. Click on this path here, load path as a selection, select, inverse selection, edit, copy, edit, paste. Bring this up. And, well, I don't need this anymore. You can just close that. You don't need to save it. I'm going to go to the File menu. I'm going to save this as letter for Florence. Save, save. The next step is to place the ribbon on top of the envelope. So I'm going to go to the File menu, Open. I'm going to double click on the ribbon. I'm going to minimize this. And basically what I did here is I wrapped the ribbon around a DVD case and then I scanned it. And so I'm going to use the pen tool one more time. And I'm going to use that because I want to create some precise paths, turn them into selection outlines, so I can copy and paste the ribbon to the working file, the letter for Florence. So select the pen tool and make sure that you go to the options bar once again and make sure the paths icon is active. So let's zoom in just a bit. I'm going to have a little more real estate. I'm now holding on the space bar to go up and down. So I'll select the pen tool, click and drag, click and drag, hold on the Alt key of the Option key on the Mac, then hold on the Shift key and just click once because I'm going to create a straight path here. Then hold on the Alt key of the Option key on the Mac and pull out a handle right here. Click and drag, move that in, and I'm holding on the Alt key of the Option key on the Mac. Click and drag. Again, change the direction of the control handle. Click and drag. Hold on the Alt key of the Option key of the Mac. Hold on the Shift key to create a straight line. Hold on the Alt key of the Option key. Pull out a handle. Click and drag. Repeat the same process. Basically, click and drag as much as you can because you want to have both the control handles, so you have a lot of control. Click and drag, bring that in, Alt, Option, just click once, click and drag here. Let's try this way, click and drag, there you go. Change the direction of the control handle. I'm going to zoom out just a bit. And let me show you something else. If you want to change, like I'm in the pen tool right now, so if I want to change this, move this anchor point right on the fly, I can just press down the control key or the command key of the Mac, and then you get the white arrow tool, which allows you to select individual anchor points and control handles to reshape them. So I'm holding down the control key or the command key of the Mac. I'm releasing the mouse and then zoom out. I'll try this long path here. Click and drag. Hold on the Shift key here. Put on a new handle. There we go. Click and drag. Same thing here. Let's try this long path here. Click and drag. There we go. And now I'm going to close the path here, and notice that there's a little circle appears right next to the handle. That means you're about to close the path. So just click once. Alright, so let's go in and let's fix our paths here. So I'm going to select again the direct selection tool, and I'm going to start from here. Now if I move this control handle here, is because this point is a smooth point. So what I want to do is I want to hold down the Alt key of the Option key and have this control handle work independently with the other handle of this one. As you can see now, it works very well. You need to spend a little time here and come as close as you can to the edge of the ribbon, but at the same time leave some breathing space, breathing room. Bring this up. Okay. Bring these down. Same thing here. just don't want to have anything showing up from the background from the DVD case. So that's what we're doing here. Bring this in a bit. You have two control handles, you see. I can have a nice curve here. Bring this down just a bit, curve. Bring this in just a bit. Now let me zoom out just a bit, and again, direct selection tool. This one here, just make sure it's straight. Bring that in. Also this point, tap your left arrow key on your keyboard, and then extend this a bit, because we're going to get also this area. Alright. Tap the right arrow key. Bring that in a bit. Alright, this one we can improve on that for sure. So I'm gonna zoom in here, and again, this is a smooth point here. That's why these two control handles are locked to each other. So what you can do is you can hold down the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and fix that, or alternatively you can just go to Convert Point tool here, and you can just do that. Very handy. And go back to the direct selection tool. Let's bring this down just a bit. Again, I'm quite picky, as you can see here, but I believe everything is on the detail. And so you're not in a hurry, just make sure you do a good job. Bring that in just a bit. Something like that. I think we're doing okay here. So I'm going to zoom out, and then I'm going to go to the paths window. And again, if you don't have that, go to the window menu and access it from the paths. And then we're going to load the path as a selection. So go to this bottom icon, click once, select, inverse your selection, edit, copy, and let's bring this up, and I'm going to do layers right here, edit, paste. Alright, so you don't need this, you can just close that or minimize it. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to shift selectors 2, layer 1 and layer 2, and I'm going to do Control T or Command T on the Mac, and that brings up the free transform tool. And then I'm going to size this down, so hold on the Alt Shift or the Option Shift on the Mac and size this down. Let's say something like that. You can accept the changes. And then and this is the ribbon, so bring up the free transform tool, Control T or Command T on the Mac. Let's rotate that, hold on the Shift key as you do. And then if you wish, you can click on this link icon to maintain aspect ratio, and then you can just scrub the value right here. I mean, alternative, whatever works for you. Choose the move tool, hold down the Shift key to make sure that you constrain your movement, and you're good to go. Alright, let's rename our layers. I'm going to double click on layer 3 and give it a name of ribbon. Double click on layer 2 and rename this to top envelope, and double click on layer 1 and name this bottom envelope. Now for the top and the bottom envelope, I want to apply a texture pattern. So I'm going to go to the layer menu, layer style, pattern overlay, or you can just double click on this layer icon right here and you can bring up the layer styles too. So from there, choose pattern overlay, click on the pattern window, and from this flyout menu, click once and load color paper. It's going to ask you to append, click append, and then scroll down and choose this color paper here. For the blend mode, I'm going to use multiply to darken things up, and click OK. I'm going to do the same thing for the top envelope, so double click, choose pattern overlay, and from the list choose this color paper. Again, use multiplied blend mode and click OK. For the ribbon now, I want to change the color, this color red. It's too vivid for my taste. So for that, I'm going to go to the bottom of the layers palette, and I'm going to bring up the hue saturation adjustment layer because I want to change the red color and to another color. So choose reds and then change the hue just a bit and then desaturate it. Now notice that this hue saturation adjustment layer affects the whole composition, and that's because we need to clip this to the ribbon. We need to make sure that this hue saturation adjustment layer only affects the ribbon. So the trick for that is to just click here and clip it. Now it only affects the ribbon, as you can see. For the ribbon itself as well, I'm going to apply another texture. It's an image that I shot in Florence. So go to File, Open, and open up Texture 3. Choose the rectangular marquee tool, click and drag, edit, copy, close this, you don't need it, it's on the clipboard, edit, paste, select the move tool, move this down a bit, and what you need to do is to do the same thing. You need to clip this to the ribbon. So you can either go to the layer menu and select create clipping mask, or I'm going to press Ctrl T or Command T. I'm sorry. I'm going to press Ctrl Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo this. Or you can just move your mouse right here, and you can move your mouse right here in the middle of those two layers. Hold down the Alt key of the option key on the Mac, and you're going to see there's two circles intersecting. Click once, and now this layer has been clipped to the ribbon. Also, I'm going to bring up the free transform tool, so Ctrl T or Command T, and just slightly size this up, just to make sure it fits, everything fits on the ribbon. Click on the check mark to accept the changes, and then I'm going to apply a blend mode for that. I'm going to show you a shortcut here. Now, to cycle through the blend modes quickly using the keyboard, use Shift plus to change to the next mode, and Shift minus to change to the previous mode. So I want you to see right here once I'm pressing Shift plus and cycling through the blend modes. So Shift plus, and you can see now the names are changing. So for that, I'm going to use a contrast blend mode, and which is a hard light. Now there's another shortcut. Each of these blend modes have their own shortcuts. So let's say that I want to go back to the normal blend mode. Hold down the Alt Shift N for normal, or the Option Shift N on the Mac. And if you want to go back to the hard light blend mode, then press Alt Shift H, and that will access directly the hard light contrast blend mode. Let's rename layer 1. So I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to call this ribbon texture. And then I'm going to go to the file menu. I'm going to click open, and I'm going to select the paper 1. which I'm going to go to the select menu, select all, edit, copy, close that, it's on the clipboard, edit, paste. Now I'm going to go to the background layer here, and I'm going to add a new layer above it, and then I'm going to click and hold and select the paint bucket tool. It's going to click once because it's white to white. I just want to have a contrast so I can see what I'm doing. Now for this I'm going to hold down and select the magic wand tool because I want to get rid of this white stuff around it. But before I do that, I'm going to select the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to click and drag and delete the bottom part. So select, deselect. Now let's get rid of this white stuff around the paper. So I'm using a tolerance of 10. So I'm going to click once, and then I want to add more to my selection. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and as you can see the plus sign appears right next to the tool. That means add to your selection. So click once again, click again, click here too, and then release the Shift key and go to the select menu and choose similar, just to make sure you select all similar colors, and then press delete on your keyboard. Select, deselect. Alright, I'm going to size this down. I'm going to press Ctrl T or Command T on the Mac to bring up the free transform tool. And I'm going to click on the link icon, and I'm going to type 50 or 50% and accept the changes. Alright, I want to change the color of this. I don't want to have yellow to yellow. So inside my adjustments panel here, I'm going to click and add a hue saturation adjustment layer. And I'm going to go to the drop down menu. I'm going to choose yellows because this is a yellow color we have for the paper. I'm going to change the color, and then I'm going to desaturate it a bit, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to clip this to the layer 1. So just click here so that it only affects layer 1 and not the entire composition. And then also I'm going to go back to the adjustments panel, and I'm going to add a levels adjustment layer, which again I'm going to clip, and I'm going to bring in some shadows here to darken this up just a bit. Now what I do now is I want to select all these 3 layers. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and do that. And I want to merge those layers because I'm not going to use this anymore. Either I'm not going to use the levels or the hue saturation. So the shortcut for this is Ctrl E or Command E on the Mac and merge those layers. Now what happened is that we have to go to the layer menu here and release the clipping mask. Okay, I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to call this paper texture, and I'm going to go to the file menu, and I'm going to open the Florence Duomo picture, which I'm going to click and drag. You can close that one. And again, I want to size this down, so Ctrl T or Command T on the Mac. Click on the link icon, and to maintain aspect ratio, and then type 40 for 40% and accept the changes. Now I'm going to select those 2 because I want to make sure this is horizontally centered. So let's do that, horizontally centered, and then let's do vertical. And then I'm just going to zoom in just a bit. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit. I'm going to nudge this down, and I'm going to use the down arrow key. And what I want to do is I want everything around the picture to have a different texture. It's like this frame, you know. So I'm going to create a frame for it. So this is what I'm going to do it. I'm going to select the paper texture, and I'm going to put a selection around it. And the way you do that is hold down the Control key or the Command key on the Mac and click once. Then I'm going to rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to hold down the Alt key on the PC or the Option key on the Mac. As you can see, this minus sign appears right next to the tool, which means remove from the selection. So I'm going to click and drag, And then I'm going to go to Edit menu, copy, edit, paste. Now you can see that I have, if I move this, the frame. So undo this, Control Z, Command Z in the Mac. Let's go to the layer menu, layer style, and I'm going to use another pattern overlay here. And for that I'm going to click the pattern again, and from the flat menu click once, and I'm going to load the rock patterns. It's going to click to, it's going to say append that, and then choose this one. And for blend mode I'm going to use color burn. Click OK. And for, let's call this frame actually. And for this layer 3, which is Duomo, I'm going to use a different blend mode. So let's zoom out a bit. And that will be hard light again. So the shortcut for this is Alt-Shift-H or Option-Shift-H on the Mac. So I'm going to select all those three with a Shift key, and then make sure you link them together. Okay, because we were going to be moving these. Alright. So let's say we move it there. If I go and see the final render here, this the frame and the image and all that appears inside the envelope. So that's what we have to do here. And so what I need to do is I'm going to select the ribbon, hold down the Shift key, and click, and then I'm going to hold down the Control key or the Command key to just deselect the top envelope. And I'm going to click and drag and bring those up on the list, on the stack of the layers. So now the image appears to be underneath. Make sure you save your work as you go. I'm going to bring now the other picture, so I'm going to go to the File menu and open up the DaVinci. And so I'm going to go to Select menu, select all, Edit, Copy, and you can close that now, it's on the clipboard, and then go to the Edit and Paste. Now we're going to size this down, so Control T or Command T on the Mac to bring up the transform tool. Click on the link icon to maintain aspect ratio and size this down to 40% and accept the changes. Let's rename layer 3 to DaVinci. And also let's rename those layers here. This is the frame on the left and this is the paper texture on the left. So double click and type L for left, and double click and type L for left too. Now I'm going to select those two, hold down the Shift key. I'm going to click and drag over here to duplicate these layers and bring them up on the list here, on the stack order. So I'm going to double click here and rename those frame right, and then same thing here with paper texture right. And since they are linked with each other, I'm just going to click and drag, hold on the Shift key to constrain my movement, and zoom in a bit. Select the Move tool and place this exactly in the middle, at least when it covers this. So I'm tapping the down arrow key on my keyboard for that. For the blend mode for the DaVinci picture, I'm going to use the same one, and that's the hard light. So shortcut is Alt-Shift-H or Command-Shift-H. For the frame, I'm going to double click and I'm going to go to Pattern Overlay, and I'm going to use another paper here, another texture. I'm going to use this one, but as you can see it's too dark, so I'm going to use another blend mode or soft light and click OK. Again, since those two are linked with each other, I'm going to press Control T or Command T, right click, flip horizontally, and accept the changes. Now to be as realistic as we can, since this texture is applied on the front and not on the back, and here we have a fold also here as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this part. I'm going to erase this part from the texture. So I'm going to select the frame and go to my eraser. Make sure you have the brush, Also make sure you have 100% hardness. I'm going to zoom in just a bit and select the eraser, and I'm going to size this down, so I'm tapping the left bracket key on my keyboard, and if you want to size this up, tap the right bracket key. So I'm just going to click and drag here a bit to erase that. Then I'm going to go to right frame and do the same. Okay, I'm going to zoom out, and now what I need to do is I'm going to select all those 3 layers and link them together and move them down the stack order and under the bottom envelope so they are inside the envelope. Now I'm going to select the whole composition here except those 2 layers, and I'm holding down the shift key for that. I'm going to rotate everything slightly, so Control T or Command T again to bring up the free transform tool and slightly rotate it, and also size it down, so Alt Shift, Option Shift, something like that. Move it up here a bit and accept the changes. Now for the DaVinci frame here, Control T or Command T again, and also slightly rotate it, something like that. Accept the changes. Move it slightly so it's not outside the envelope. Also this one, let's slightly move it, and don't forget to save your changes. Control S or Command S. We're going to place the sunflower right here on the top on the envelope. So go to the File menu, Open, and open up the sunflower Photoshop file, which already contains a path, so we can just copy and paste it in our composition. So go to the Paths window here, and if you don't have it, just go to the Window menu and select Paths. Click on the path, and then at the bottom, click on this icon to load the path as a selection. So click once, select Inverse your selection, Edit, Copy, close this one, go to the Layers window, and then click on the topmost layer, Edit, Paste. Now we're going to size this down, so Control T or Command T on the Mac to bring up the free transform tool. Click on the link icon to maintain aspect ratio, and then click and drag to the left to size this down interactively, like so. Place this up here, accept the changes, and for blend mode I'm going to use luminosity, and the direct shortcut for this is Alt Shift Y or Option Shift Y on the Mac. Double click, rename this sunflower. Now we're going to go to the File menu, and we're going to open up Paper 2, select the rectangular marquee tool, click and drag, Edit, Copy, close this one, Edit, Paste. Now I'm going to continue using the rectangular marquee tool because I'm going to click and drag and trim at the top a bit. So press Delete on your keyboard, select, deselect. Alright. Now we're going to create a paragraph type because we want to confine our text within the width of our paper we just opened. So we're going to define an area by drawing a bounding box. And I'm not going to use the whole paper because some of it is going to go in the back, so you won't be able to see all of it anyway. So I'm going to select the Type tool, and I'm going to click and drag and define the area where the type will be inserted. As for the type, I already have something for you, so open up the Italian words, select all, Control A or Command A on the Mac, copy this, Control C or Command C on the Mac, and then paste it, Control V or Command V on the Mac to paste. Now go to the Window menu and bring up the character window. Now for the leading, I'm going to increase this to something like that. Now what happens is not all the text appears now inside the area, so we need to change the size of the text block. The way you do this is click on the Type tool, click once, and now you can see all these handles around, which you can just click on the handles and change the width of the type area. So click and drag, and I'm looking at the last word right here. Okay, accept the changes. And let's move the type a little bit. I'm tapping my right arrow key here. Just make sure you're in the move tool, of course. Like so. Let's also rename this. That will be torn paper, and I will get to this very soon. And I'm going to select both. Actually, before I do that, let me go to the rectangular marquee tool. Right this, and then press delete on your keyboard. Select, deselect. Now, select both of these layers and move them under the top envelope. Move this down a bit. Control T or Command T on the Mac to rotate, and slightly rotate it. Like so. Accept the changes. And now I'm going to work on the torn paper. So what I want to do is I'm going to create a torn paper edge effect. So I'm going to use the lasso tool and lace around the edges of the letter. Like so. And try to be as random as you can to show a natural effect of a torn paper. Don't do a perfect zigzag here, so something like that. And then select, inverse your selection, and press delete on your keyboard. Select, deselect, and I actually like what I see here. So I'm going to double click on the torn paper. I'm going to go to pattern overlay. I'm going to use this pattern right here, and then I'm going to use a contrast blend mode, soft light. I click OK. Actually, before I click OK, I'm going to go to drop shadow. Let's put a shadow here, and then I'm going to scrub this to the left just to decrease the distance, and then scrub to the right to increase the size just a tad. And I'm looking interactively what I'm doing here. So click OK, and then create a new layer right here on the top of the text. Select the brush, and then make sure you have a very soft brush, zero hardness. And then use a color of your choice, and then click and drag and create like a shadow. Right, something like that. So we can double click here and rename this, call this shadow. Don't forget to save your work. Looking at the image covering the top of the ribbon right here, appears to be flat and not naturally bent as the ribbon itself. And so to make things more realistic, we're going to use the Displace filter inside Photoshop, which is a grayscale image that uses the brightness values of one file to shift the position of or displace pixels in another file. Anything that is darker than 50% gray will push pixels down and to the right. Anything that is lighter than 50% gray will push pixels up and to the left. 50% gray is going to have absolutely no effect on the image. So in other words, black moves colors down and to the right, where white moves colors up and to the left. 50% gray makes no difference on the distortion of the image. Also, the displacement image needs to be a single channel image and be saved as a Photoshop document. So I'm going to go and click on the topmost layer. I'm going to create a new layer, which I'm going to fill this with a 50% gray. So I'll go to the edit menu, choose fill, and from the drop down menu, click and choose 50% gray. Click OK. Now because I want to be able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to lower the layer's opacity to 50%. So press 5 on your numeric keyboard and automatically have 50%. Also I'm going to go right here, I'm going to be looking at these colors because I want to have the default black and white. So press D on your keyboard for that. And then press X to flip the colors, or X again to flip the colors back again, and that's the shortcut. Then go and choose your brush, and I use a very soft brush with zero hardness. Make sure you have opacity 100 and flow 100. Now I'm going to flip the colors. I'm going to first start painting with white, and remember white moves colors up and to the left. So I'm going to click and drag and paint like so. and then I'm going to flip again. I'm going to press X on my keyboard. I'm going to paint the rest kind of with black. Something like that. Alright, and then I'm going to make the opacity back to 100, so press 0 on your keyboard. Then I'm going to go to Select menu, select all, Edit, Copy, File New, click OK, Edit Paste. Now this has to be a single channel image, so I'm going to go to the Image menu, Mode, Grayscale. I'm going to flatten this, click Disregard, and you can also see this from the channels right here. And then the softer the transition these colors have, the softer the bend on the layers will be. So I'm going to give a little bit of blur. So go to the Filter menu, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and choose something between 4 and 5. Well, it depends your image as well. Alright, so click OK, File, and I'm going to save this as a Photoshop document. I'm going to name this DMap for Displacement Map. Click Save, close this one, you don't need it. Select, deselect, you can just delete that. And then we're going to go to the ribbon texture here, go to the Filter menu, Distort, Displace. Now, the Displace filter is made up of two separate dialog boxes, the horizontal scale and the vertical scale. Both options determine how much impact the displacement map will have on the image. So in other words, they determine how far the pixels in the image will shift horizontally and vertically. So I'm going to keep things as is, except I'm going to lower the horizontal and the vertical value to something very small, because I want a very slight displacement, a very slight shift. So I'm going to click OK, and then it's going to ask you to choose a displacement map. Click, select, open, and here we go. So I'm going to do before and after. So I'm going to do Control Z or Command Z. You're going to see the before and then the after. Do it one more time, before and after. I also have some textures that we're going to use to put them in as a background. So I'm going to go to the File menu, Open, and I'm going to open up first Texture 2, which I'm going to click and drag and hold down the Shift key as I do to place it around the middle. You can close that one, and then click and drag and drop this under the torn paper. Now I'm going to rename this. I'm going to double click, and this is a wall texture. And then I'm going to go to the File menu, File, Open, and I'm going to open up Texture 1, which again I'm going to hold down the Shift key and I'm going to click and drag and drop it right in the middle and move this under the wall texture, and double click to rename this Wood texture. Alright, for the wall texture I'm going to use Multiply Blend Mode, and the direct shortcut for this is Alt-Shift-M or Command-Shift-M on the Mac. Now you don't need this layer 2, so you can just delete it. Alright. Now I'm going to add some drop shadows here on the papers and the envelope. So I'm going to the paper texture, right, I'm going to double click, and I'm going to click on the drop shadow, uncheck the Use Global Light, and I'm going to do this interactively, so click and drag and move the drop shadow to the left, like so, and you can size this up. If you scrub to the right, it will increase the pixels. And click OK. And then for the paper texture left, I'll do the same. Click on the drop shadow, uncheck the Use Global Light, and then click and drag to the left and do this interactively. And click OK. Let's go to the bottom of the envelope, double click to open up the layer styles. I already have a pattern overlay, so click on drop shadow, uncheck the Use Global Light. Let's do this a little carefully here. I want to go to the bottom down here, and then I will size up and make the shadow softer, something like that. As you can see, before I had a red background, so I couldn't see what I did with the shadow here. So select the shadow layer, go to the eraser tool, and then make sure you have a very soft brush. I have 0% hardness, and just click and erase that shadow here. Another thing you can do is we can just select all of these guys here, all these layers, and slightly move them to the center, something like that. Don't forget to save your work. Control S to save, Command S to save on the Mac. And as you can see, we have completed our composition, and you know, the challenge comes from collecting the right materials, but everything's around us. So keep your eyes open, start scanning, capture images and textures that you may use, and come up with a creative design. This concludes this lecture, and thank you for watching Third Element Train Tutorials.